I guess I'm a little nervous because this topic I'm about to talk about is a little weird. It's a weird one to talk about because I mean it can be simple and it can also be crazy complex. So the two topics I want to talk about today are scope. So scope in your scene. Oh man. Whoa. Let's just bold that. There we go. Beautiful. I'm gonna just refresh this really fast. So one of the downsides about Miro is sometimes it needs a refresh if you're using the browser. Just gotta make sure it's oof. Wonder if that's gonna be like that the whole time. Anyways, so I want to talk about scope for your scenes. Oh, thanks, Martin. Thank you. Martin's reminding me about the timer. That's an hour and 3 minutes from now. So there we go. Thanks, Martin. Man, I hope this is, there we go. It seems to be a little smoother. I also like to type in caps all the time, so let's see how that goes. So I want to talk about scope, and then I also want to talk about feature creep, right? Because feature creep does indeed affect art, but it's more of something that you won't really encounter until you're either working in a team for like a school project, or you're actually in production. And the pacing of this chat as well, just so for people that are new in the stream, the pacing of this part of the stream is kind of like a pre-show. So I'll be looking at chat, answering questions as they come in, and then just kind of talking about these two topics. And then in about 62 minutes, we'll be handing it over to Jasmine to talk about her scene. You're looking forward to this talk? Oh boy, Ben. I mean, I think it's interesting because there's so many things that can go right and wrong in production, and more often than not, you get a mix of both, right? Some stuff's gonna slip, some stuff is gonna work really well, some stuff that you thought was gonna like be amazing is just falls apart in front of you, and you have to figure it out. But at least you have a team to help you with it, right? So let's start with scope, because this is probably going to be more relatable to most of you in here if you're not in games yet. And I guess if you look at scope for yourself while you're at work is also going to be a little relevant. But so if you're building a scene, and we talked a little bit about this in the last stream as well, you plan your scene out, right? And then you have to figure out what is that? How big is it going to be? So there's the scale. Oh man. Scale full caps, please. There's scale of your scene overall, and then you have understanding the narrative of like what you're trying to tell, what the story is. And then the ultimate part of the scope is like, how long do you have to build this, right? Paul, what's up, man? How you doing? Timeline. This is straight up for anyone who knows producers, knows a producer, wants to be a producer, or has any sense of a producer in design. This is their favorite thing in the world is timelines, which is, I mean, that's how am I going to make this whole thing, tell this story, build it all, and I have until this date, right? So when you're gotta love spreadsheets. I'm a huge fan of things like Excel, which is very strange for artists, right? Not very many artists like Excel. So you have to just ask yourself, like, okay, how big is this scale and the narrative is not going to be affected by your timeline, but the scale will directly be determined by how long you have, right? And if you estimate these wrong, this is where you go into your own little personal crunch. And I think in games, that's how it happens as well, is if you're not willing to adjust. Hang on, my window is open. There's kids going crazy out there. If you didn't know, it's summer. It's summer here now. Rouge, that's great that you like Excel and timelines. You excel at Excel? Young kids trying to have fun. So the scale of your scene will be directly affected by your timeline. And if you go over in how much you want to build, like how big your scene gets, it becomes very easy to go over your timeline. And I think this is probably one of the better aspects of going to school, is there's a forced deadline, right? That like if you're working on your own at home, you can be in a position where essentially you can go over your deadline and it's not that bad. You're like, oh, I guess I just have to keep going. And that's how you work on scenes for months and even a year or plus sometimes, right? And that's very realistically is not a good, you don't want to be in that position. Because what'll end up happening, honestly, is you'll get bored of the scene, which I'm sure anyone in chat, including myself, you lose interest, or you get burnt out on it and you just don't want to look at it anymore, or you hate it and then just, and there's good ways to reset that feeling through art communities and whatnot, chatting with people in the Empire or on other Discord servers. But knowing what you're capable of, and what you want to try, and understanding how that fits in the timeline is very, very important. Forever Whips, final 03. So what I usually would suggest is figure out first if it's what you want to be learning, or if you want to create something without learning much, right? So if you already know how to do a lot of stuff, you can force yourself into this position where essentially you're not going to learn something. You're just going to work on building a scene. Of course, you're always learning something, right? So if say you know how to build props and you know how to texture and you know how to build the layout of a space, it's really understanding that the end goal is to create the scene. It's not figuring out how to do something that you've never done before, or trying to understand how RVT terrain works, or displacement materials, and it's totally fine to have both of them. Just know that it extends the amount of time it's going to take for you to build what you're trying to build. So I would say, first of all, figure out what you want to be doing with this scene. Is it for the portfolio? And we touched on this last stream as well. It's like, is it for the portfolio, or is it for learning? So stick to your timeline and start to estimate how long it's going to take you to do things. And you'll be able to tell, like, if you haven't done something before, it becomes very difficult to estimate how long it'll take. And if you want to have a sense of achievement as well, let's say you don't know how to do RVT terrain in Unreal, real-time virtual textures. Put it on the thing, put it on your chart, and guess how long it's, like, estimate how many hours it's going to take you. Because a lot of the time when I'm working and doing personal estimates, or if I'm at work, the estimates are going to be in hours, because how work is it's an 8-hour shift, right? So if I'm like, okay, this is going to take 2 days, that's 16 hours, right? So if you could use a tool to time you, or you can estimate, like, okay, if I do 4 hours a day, like working from home, not in a job, but just working on your art from home, that's going to be 4 days of 4-hour days to get to 16 hours, right? So if it goes beyond that, just keep going, understand how long it took you to do that task, and now know that because you've learned it, that amount of time is substantially going to be lower the next time you do it, as long as you go in and retain that learning experience. That's another thing with like mind retention of learning, is you need to not only get enough sleep, because that's the only way your brain like gets that into like deep memory, but you need to give your brain time to absorb what you just taught yourself. So if you're trying to do like 30 or 40, it's a really high number, but let's say you're trying to learn how to do like 10 different things in this one scene. By the end of the scene, you'll maybe remember the 2 most impactful ones. Whereas like if you can scale that down, Gab, what's up, man? Finally found it. What do you mean? So scaling down what you're learning as well is going to help you with your timeline. So let me see where I'm at in my little notes here. Yeah, what is the narrative? So the end goal is the story you're trying to tell, right? And a scene can be visually amazing. What's up, Andre? A scene can be visually amazing, but I think when people are saying, "Oh my God, it looks so good," and there's more to it than just the really sick looking art. It's telling a story. You're seeing something in it that is saying more than what's just there on the screen, right? So you're actually seeing what happened in a scene, if it's like a murder scene, or if it's like some old decrepit building. Even if there's no characters, if you can tell a story and you can visualize the characters being there, and that all forms in your mind, that's truly, in my opinion, what is making people think the piece is so good. It can still be amazing without a story, but the ones that resonate are the ones that like go deeper than like just the visual level. So having a strong narrative that fits in the timeline because of the scale you set is your scope, right? So if you don't have good management of your own time and tasks that you're trying to complete to fit within the timeline, you're going to go either into overtime or you're going to overscope. So overscoping is essentially what I was trying to show you guys how to not do in the last stream. Yeah, Martin's very smart. So Polygon in chat says Martin Hoff told his students to try and have at least 3 narrative elements in their work, things that give the art a story. The detective scene, yeah, that scene's really good, man. Beta Razor, it's all story, right? So in the last stream, I was talking a lot about like the block out stage and blocking out everything, and that's an attempt to not only like block out all of your assets, but to keep the countdown of props needed in order to build the scene. So that's a way of controlling scale, is by blockouts. That's one of the main ways you can do it, is like block out everything. You could then estimate those blockouts, and then figure out like, okay, is this going to be enough for me? And when I was saying you're blocking out everything, you can get into this blocking out or making too many props, which is why I say block it all out, because then you'll be able to prop the scene with your blockouts and see the scale of like how much or how little you actually need. Block out the blockout, yes. You'll be able to see how much you need in order to actually create the scene, which cuts down on your scale, which makes your scope smaller. Oh man, Relic, thanks for the resub, man. That is a long time, 27 months. Now, everything that I was saying in the last stream was talking about managing the scale, not going crazy through a step of all these steps in the process, right? Now, that's my way of negating like overscoping or scope creep. But it really starts to get crazy when you look at feature creep, because that touches more than just one department, right? So blocking out your scene, getting estimates on it, and only building the minimum of what you need in order to achieve the look. Not even the look, achieve the narrative, because of course you're going to work on the look. That doesn't even need to be listed in here, right? We all want to make the art look really good, but it should all be focusing on the end goal, which is the narrative. So if you're building a bunch of props, you're easily going to go past your timeline, your estimated timeline. And by doing all the blockouts, once you start making them and actually building the art, if you're feeling like, okay, my estimates are a little off, you can see it immediately, because you'll be like, okay, I built this prop. I thought it would take, I don't know, three working days or 4 working days. So 32 hours. And it took 40 something, right? And you see that with each asset you're building. In order to descope, this is like where cutting comes in, right? This is like you're cutting assets that are nice to have, but not needed to fulfill the narrative. And the other thing that I want to mention is that outsourcing, even to someone who is working on their own art from home, is totally possible. I really want to make sure to drive this home that it is okay to be downloading free asset packs or buying packs of props and using those in your scene. Because the reality is you're going to have to do something to that prop to make it blend in with the rest of your scene. So that's totally fine. And I would suggest the things that you buy are the stuff that you don't really want to build. Like we were having a discussion in the Discord where it's like, I want to build this scene, and one of the main things in the shot is a vehicle. It's like, okay, well, do you want to build the vehicle? No, not really. But I want to, like, it's part of it's like the centerpiece of the shot that I want to build. With it being a centerpiece, it's kind of like a hero prop, and I can totally get why you feel like you would want to build that. But it's also okay to buy or download a free model of a car and then do your own texture pass on it, right? And that's just one example. I would say that the props that you download via marketplaces should be adding that extra fidelity to your scene that requires you to really sit down and do small stuff like cardboard boxes. If it's a kitchen scene, like cups and plates and stuff like that, maybe, did I have like an eyelash or what's going on here? Maybe you want, maybe that kitchen scene, you make those plates and those cups and all that stuff, you make them yours by going into the texture and adding all of the details on them, right? Or the patterns, or changing the color, or adjusting the roughness. I would say, though, that even though you're not necessarily making some of that content, I personally believe that 10% of your scene being those types of assets is totally fine, where it wasn't necessarily built by you. And it's just making sure that you're managing the time to meet your deadline, while at the same time giving credit to where all that stuff came from. Dude, this, I think I got it. Maybe I need a haircut. Maybe that's what's going on. Oh, I don't think I got it. Oh my God. I'm gonna lose my mind. So yes, outsourcing. The other option is to collab or work with another artist, right? We were talking about Yin on the stream last week was talking about collabing or collaborating with another artist, which sounds super interesting. I don't know if Jasmine's listening, but she wants to collab with you, yo. So collabing or collaborating with another artist is a great opportunity for not only one artist, but now 2 or even 3, depending on how you split up the work. One of the really good ways to build Yazjin, Paul, one of the really good ways to build your portfolio as a material artist is to actually show your materials in context, right? Where they're actually being used. And that's the perfect opportunity. Just like, it's almost like piggybacking on another artist's scene. Of course, you guys agree to it. And you make those materials. You learn to read what that artist is looking for, how they want the material to read. I just realized my voice is peaking out a lot. Or like making materials that you wouldn't necessarily make in your free time. You're now padding your portfolio with all of these materials, right? And it allows you to really focus on those materials. You can keep polishing them and making them better while the other artist is actually building the rest of the scene. Would you say it's worth redoing all the materials you've made in the past once you feel more confident with your skills? No, I mean, you can, but I think it's better to just keep challenging yourself. Or like if it's a cobblestone, don't remake that cobblestone. Make another cobblestone material altogether with a different mood and feeling. But what if the Future Studio requires you do something you haven't done before? For example, if you download ornament 3D models and don't really know how to build them. So Martin, the reality is I bet that company is downloading and using those ornament pieces as well, but you should be able to improve and build to make it happen, right? Wipeout, how you doing? What's Tobias? The equivalent happens in production all the time. Spend in-house resources carefully is crucial. It's the same with your personal resources. When on a personal project, some content can either be created or buying or outsourcing. Yes. Judd, what's up, man? Visual, how you doing? Welcome. I'm glad you feel like you're learning things. That's awesome. So collaborating with an artist, it's a great way to do it. I always talk about Alex Vito's scene where he's got a bunch of guns like on a table and like it's like on the side and stuff, and they really add to the scene, right? Those, and he didn't make them. That's totally okay, and you credit like who made that, put it under the image, you know, in the text on ArtStation, but also in the description. If you add text at the end, like if we do this, it's a little side tangent, but I want to make sure it's super clear. If your description is blah 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 blah, and then at the very end, if you add a space and then add the ArtStation link, it will make a like little thumbnail that previews the user's name and then all of their information. Glowfly, how you doing? I mean, SFGF, totally. But yeah, that's collabing with other artists is okay. And we should see more of it when it comes to like trying to increase your scope but stay within your timeline, right? So allocate nicely, and you'll both profit, or everyone will profit from the completed scene. Now that I've stated all that, I'm gonna kind of start to dive into this whole feature creep thing, because it can get really complicated, and scope creep can also occur. So just for definition, let's say that, let me think here. You know, so in Uncharted, they have the rope. The most recent Uncharted, they have the rope that you can like latch onto trees and stuff, and then you can pull the vehicle up a hill or those types of, that's a feature, right? Now the knock-on effect of a feature is that it requires, of course, programming, a specific visual that's not only the rope and like how the vehicle moves with it and all that tech behind that, but also like telling the player, hey, this is the tree you can latch onto. Like you can wrap the rope around that tree. Like, how do they tell you that, right? So there's all these visual cues that have to occur. There's sound that's involved with that as well. And then you have all these departments being affected by this one feature. That's essentially how games are made. If you look at like multi-department organization, right, where each department is working together to create a feature. Now, if that feature then expands into like, oh, I want to be able to use this rope to climb the vehicle up the side of a cliff. Okay, well now we need to support cliffs. Is it all cliffs or is it some of them? How do we tell a player that that's a cliff that they can climb up with the rope attached to a vehicle? It's a weird example, but hopefully it's making enough sense. It has this knock-on effect that hits everyone. And if you think about all the estimates and the timelines I was saying, every time something gets added or things change, it's going to affect your estimates. But the reality is most of the time, timelines are locked. When you see a studio announce that they're going to delay or whatever, that means the timeline got shifted somewhere. Who knows where or what? That's not for us to decide. We're just artists, right? That's up to other people to figure out for us. Now, let's say the timeline's locked and features keep changing and adjusting. That can get kind of dicey when it comes to estimates. And that's how overtime can form. Cutting of content helps to negate Polygon. Cutting of content helps to negate a lot of that stress that can occur to the development of a project. And I think I'm making my point with like how feature creep affects like everything. So it's not just how it works, but how it looks, how it plays, how it sounds. Nice, Andre. But it can also happen without features moving around much, right? So when you start to get scope that creeps, that's usually a sign of, how do I word this? Scope that creeps is usually a sign of the lack of understanding of the end goal. So if you don't know what you want it to look like and how you want it to feel visually, when the artist jumps onto it, that's when you can get into a situation where the artist will work on it. It'll be done and it looks pretty cool, but it's not exactly what was wanted, right? So maybe they'll go back and they'll redo it, or they'll go back. Maybe they'll get concept to make a concept of it. And this is an industry-wide kind of process that can occur. It's not horrible by any means, but it can spiral. Just so that we're clear that can happen. But yeah, so the scope can creep and the visuals can be adjusted and changed and updated over and over, which pushes the estimates out of the visuals. And at some point you have to meet your deadline anyways, right? So you're going to have to finish it. So just so you guys are aware about like how feature creep and your personal scope, art scope, production scope, how all of those are affected. I think the main thing that I wanted to talk about, and I still have like, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 minutes of talking. But the main thing I wanted to talk about is understanding your scale and your timeline. Yeah. BTVR, group morale can definitely go down. So what you're saying there is planning involved in all of this? So are you saying there's planning involved in all yes. so you have to essentially plan everything. I mean, Pontus, of course you know this. Of course. I think it was a rhetorical question. It's like what you're saying is we need to plan. Now, so I want to just kind of open it up to questions from chat just to see, because this is essentially all I had to talk about. This is all I wanted to talk about, and I didn't know how long it would take me to go through it. I think I've just scratched the surface of it. But we can expand on these as well. This is a lot of stuff. I mean, yes. See, in these, when you're doing this solo, wouldn't that be planning to make a plan? To be so when you're on your own, you're just working with your own narrative, your scale, and your own personal timeline. Pre-planning, that sounds like pre-production. So usually a game will go from pre-production to production, and then you close it, bug fix, ship, right? But yeah, so pre-production is usually when you remember when I was talking in the last stream, we were talking about where is it at here? Documentation. Yeah, document. All the documentation, that's all going to happen in the pre-production. Figuring out what your narrative is, what the scale of the project is. The timeline's usually kind of understood. So how to get an estimate if you're learning on your own and doing things for the first time? That is a that is a great question. And Pontus's answer is pretty spot on. You just kind of guess the best guess that you can, and then see how far off you are. Because I mean, the reality is if you're a really optimistic person, like I can be overly optimistic. So I'll be like, oh, this thing's going to probably take, I don't know, 24 working hours. Because I'm optimistic, I've learned to just add another day onto that estimate just to do that, right? And if I'm wrong and it was actually what I estimated, then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm getting better at estimating. But it's an estimate, right? It's not like a precise measurement either. Yeah, and sometimes several people guessing together is a great way to agree on the assumption of accuracy. The other thing too is if you have a team, maybe someone's really good at foliage and then someone's actually really good at hard surface. It's probably better that you give the hard surface person that's interested in hard surface tasks, right? And then you have the foliage artist doing foliage. If you reverse those, the estimates are going to be different, right? Because it can be very easy to estimate a task as like a general estimate, but we should also remember that who is working on what changes those estimates. Array, you've actually started recording your screen while you work, so you're conscious of the time you're spending doing stuff. Yeah, that works. There was I don't know where it was in chat, but there was a question on or a thing for estimating time as well that just runs in the background and gives you a clock. I'm sure it'll be said in chat here in a second. Let's see. So for someone new, I'm learning 3D and I'm trying to make some of my first things for my portfolio. Which of these are the most important for me to focus on? I mean, if you're just getting into your portfolio, which on Wednesday we're going to be talking about resumes and portfolios in general, but I think the first things you should be focusing on are assets. And I think we even touched on this a little bit as a side tangent on, what was that, week 2, I think? It's like if I could design some form of an education plan, you wouldn't even be going beyond like making props in the first year. Yeah, Excel is great for doing everything. For time tracking, Clockify. Thank you, Mad Max. Clockify is one of them. I use TickTick. I just started using that actually recently, but yeah, it's just a matter of like, okay, I'm going to time myself, and then you pause it when you go to take like a break or whatever. But when you're first building or first learning, I don't think you should worry too much about these estimates. I know I'm talking about this type of stuff, and this is kind of the downside when it comes to like how our learning is so open and broad now, is it becomes very, very overwhelming almost immediately. The moment you understand everything that's possibly involved, you think you have to learn all of it all at once. And it's not necessarily the case. TickTick is I don't think is free, no. But the like Clockify is free. Just look up free time estimators. I mean, it could even be a timer with just Google, and you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna hit go, and then yeah. Particle, you're overwhelmed. Oh man, I'm sorry. Just remember, Resultify has a free version. Ah, nice. And Miro uses Clockify. Can confirm it's pretty good. Awesome. Dude, TickTick's doing everything for me right now. Let's see here. I'm reading through chat really fast to make sure I'm. Yeah, clearly defining your scope is super important. And I think because of the way we can learn now, where everything is there, right? It's very overwhelming. You could build yourself a curriculum, and I'm like trying to do that now with the Empire University stuff, but try to only tackle, like we were talking about, scale. This doesn't just sit to your scene, right? It's the scope of your brain as well, and like how far you want to push yourself. Tej, what's up, man? How you doing? Good to see you. Figuring out how far you want to go in a given amount of time is your timeline and the scope of mental capacity, right? And keeping the scale relatively approachable is going to be more rewarding, and you're going to learn more from it, and you're actually going to it's going to be more rewarding. That's what I said first. It's just going to be more rewarding. And don't forget to, I'm going on a crazy tangent now, but don't forget to look back at what you did for the day and say that you did a good job, because you did something, right? So Bulls has his own estimates of how long tasks will take me in production, but I'm always concerned people will judge me based on how long I need. Is it best just to be honest and say you're slow? Yes, totally. That's totally fine. You're not slow. That's just the speed that you currently do it at, right? Some people will get faster, some people will get slower. And that's just the reality of it. The issue with general guessing for me is I tend to lose time on tutorials. Yeah, now tutorials, that's very different because you're learning a lot, right? You're absorbing stuff you've never done before. Ben says he's the slowest artist he knows. So it's Din University, yes, Dinversity. You heard it here first. But yeah, a curriculum or a step-by-step, like, okay, I'm gonna work on these things. Once I feel like I'm good at that, then I'll move on to the next thing, and then once I'm good at that, I'll move on to the next. But this is all kind of just diving into your personal scope and your timeline and your own estimates. Particle, that's interesting. You say double your slowest estimate and then add another 50%, and you're getting close to a good estimate. You can get in a loop of just watching. It's true. I think learning how to learn is also visual. That's something that we take for granted. We assume we can just watch and then you absorb it and then you have it. Like, no way, man. Like, take a tutorial and turn it into chunks, right? Segments. This is why I think tutorials on YouTube should start adding chapters that are just clear breakpoints for you to stop and process what you just went through, or try it yourself. It should be verbally stated, like, all right, now that we've discussed that, try it yourself. Yeah, Ben likes to automate things. It definitely speeds them up for sure. So I would suggest watching a chunk, doing the chunk, going to the next piece, and then repeat, and just kind of work your way through that, right? So it's kind of a way of learning. Now, if you're rewatching it over and over, you got to ask yourself why. Why are you rewatching it over and over? So I definitely kind of put learning and doing, or like personal production, as like two separate things, right? I say personal production because you're not on a team like building an entire game or anything like that, right? So these are two very different things. As Din said, it's your responsibility to provide the products good data, the producers good data to work with. Yeah, so they can get an estimate of like, okay, is this game going to be crazy big to build based off like our director ambitions? You get an estimate, even if it's kind of a guess. That guess is at least a little educated, right? You're like, oh wow, this is going to be like way too long. How do we shrink? What can we cut in order to retain that information? Was it one of my friends said, design work, anything from director reviews, feedback that increases the scope of a project, design work that seeks to define or clarify systems by adding rather than cutting. So that's where you get not only feature creep, but scope creep. It's like, okay, how do we expand on this to make it really sell what we're trying to sell? When you should look at it and go, okay, why is it not working? Is there anything we can remove and refine to make it work? That's more of a feature aspect of it, because a lot of the times it's the reality is if you want to, from a visual standpoint, if you want to really push a scene, more often than not, it's really just driving the theme home really hard. Like, all right, it's a hospital, and it's just there was a monster. Someone like got up and they just started going crazy, and there's blood everywhere and blah blah. In order to sell that, you don't have like the one room and like it just looks like messed up in there. We're talking like full on decals of blood everywhere. Just go nuts trying to drive that theme home, and it's right there in front of you as a viewer. It doesn't get any clearer than that, is when you just overdo it, because you can always overdo and then scale back based off of like how people react to certain things, and you can adjust. But what is a realistic timeline that a game company would give for making an asset? For example, environment props. Polygon's saying it pretty accurately. There's too many factors that can impact the time and really define working. Like, is it a chair, or is it like a hero asset, right? And the reality is you're the one giving the timeline, and then they look at that timeline and they go, okay, that's how long it's going to take. How do we make that lower? And then you as an artist can tell them where you can make compromises to lower the cost of the time to make the content. But yeah, it's a very broad subject, and it can't really be boiled down to that. Game company would not actually give you the timeline of a single prop. You should be the one giving them the timeline. You're the one with the power, you know what I mean? You're the one who can create things, make the stuff. Let me make sure I'm not missing other. There's some really long messages in chat. Just want to make sure I'm getting them all. Yes, Cheese Whiz, dude, I love your Commander Cheese Whiz. Did you used to play Elite Dangerous? Because that username, um, you never feel like I'm doing enough. So in addition to a to-do list, I like to keep a to-done list. That's a great way because it's like a form of accomplishment, right? You see all the things you'd achieved. The app that I was talking about, TickTick, actually makes a kind of like a diary to show you all the things you completed in that day and or in the week or in the month, so you can see all the stuff you've done. But yeah, time estimation you will not get overnight. You have to constantly be honing it and building on that. It's like a clock. There you go. But yeah, like Particle's saying, time estimation is a skill that needs to be practiced. I love how this conversation turned into like time estimations. Oh, what am I doing here? So, okay. But yes, I'm actually at this point I'm technically done with what I wanted to discuss. Do you guys have other questions in chat? We've got about 17 minutes until Jasmine takes over, which I'm super excited about. If you go to the Discord, there's the link. There's a channel where you can say a question in our questions for DinCon. And at the end of Jasmine's talk, I'll be making sure to dive into those questions and see if I can get some answers. But yeah, let's see. It's kind of a low-key scary. Wait, let's see. Let me. That's kind of low. So Visual says it's kind of low-key scary part for me. Once I get into the industry, to just like what's the estimate on the prop? See, the thing is like, don't worry about it. That'll come in time, and when it does come up, you'll already be in a position for yourself where you can answer that, right? Where you can answer estimations or give a rough estimate. We always say guesstimate to just see like where that's at. My latest strategy, so Ahmed says, my latest strategy was to force at least 60% of my working time to actually working, not tutorials. Yes, and that's kind of that dividing factor I was talking about with learning and personal production. You can do all the learning you want, but at some point you actually have to build something. And when you're building something, remember to turn off the learning part and just focus on building. There's a very, very important key factor there. It's the same reason that once you get into the industry, you have this like, I almost want to call it student PTSD, where now you're in game production, but you still have this urge that you need to be like building on your portfolio. Like, just stop and enjoy, like, smell the flowers. You made it. And I mean, I don't know how you shake that from a student. But it goes away. Quality. You're used to the student grind, right? And then you go to work and your brain is doing so much learning, and then you come home and you're just like, I still need to work on my portfolio. You haven't even had your first day yet? Yeah, dude, you can get a hobby. Imagine that. Or enjoy like free time to play some games or something. Do you use TickTick for planning of the personal 3D work? Pets. Oh man, Tobias, you're getting hardcore, man. Where was I at in chat here? So I don't use right now. I don't use TickTick for personal 3D work. I use Miro, and actually, Jasmine uses Miro as well. I was like pleasantly surprised to see another artist using Miro. Dude, it's super powerful. Yeah, so when you're in an internship, Andre, you use Miro? Dude, nice. How different from Notion. So just imagine Miro. This is Miro. Imagine Miro as your pure ref in the clouds, right? That's probably the best way to describe it. But Miroslav's he's going crazy, man. Yeah, it's like Notion and pure ref combined a little bit. But yeah, no one expects you to know how everything works when you get in. Dragon, you do as well? Oh man, we got a bunch of closet Miro users. Not Miroslav. We're not using you, Miroslav. Yeah, Excel is also a good way of organizing. I use Notion a lot also. I've been feeling like that for the last 2 years. It still causes me to sit and get worried about my portfolio when it comes to modeling. I get overwhelmed with what to make. I end up not making anything. So I went back to the basics and making small props slowly but surely. Hey, and that totally works. Closet Miro users, you like that? So are you saying you should ditch PureRef? No. PureRef scares me that it can corrupt so easily. And I can't draw on it. I can't URL link inside of it. I can't share it with other people in a way where we can all work on it at the same time. But PureRef is a great option. It's free as well. Yeah, they're two different use cases in general, in my opinion. But yes. Yeah, PureRef is missing a lot of features that I think it could really benefit from. Miroslav's going crazy by now, I'm sure. So Bronze Gear was talking about internships and working in the industry. Man, we're so in tangent mode now. This is totally fine. We're in pre-show. So when you're in an internship, it is true that there is no promise that you will get a job after the internship is done, correct? But having an internship on your resume or your CV is really, it looks really good. And if you're doing really good at that company, you should get a feeling. Actually, I wouldn't even rely on a feeling. I would just straight up ask them that you want to follow up leading up to maybe the halfway point and near the end of your internship. That way you can plan for yourself what you're going to do. Also in your internship, paid or not, don't do overtime. Don't do that. Because like maybe you're going to need that extra energy at home. You know what I mean? To actually work on your other stuff. But yeah. Do you guys have any other questions before we transition over? We've got maybe like another minute or so, and then I'll switch over to talk to Jasmine for a second, make sure she's all good to go. Andre's talking about underworking. All right. I think we're going to switch over.